5 of them. Count them.
Number 5.
5 of them. 5 people. All of them alive and paying attention. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I think the hardest part of prepping this speech was getting any search engine to differentiate between drag the physics concept, drag the common use verb, and drag the performance art, what we're actually going to be talking about today. And honestly, if that's not a good metaphor for how misunderstood drag is in common use, I don't know what is. So, since drag is such a poorly understood idea in the cultural consciousness, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a rundown on what drag is, where it comes from, and the role it plays in the queer community. First things first, what is drag? The most basic definition is when someone dresses up in the clothes of the opposite gender, or at least those things associated with the opposite gender. This definition falls a little short of what we'll be talking about, but it's a good starting point. In the context of what we're talking about here, drag is the act of dressing up as in the clothes of the opposite gender, but usually in more outlandish and stylistic ways for the sake of a performance, involving things like lip syncing, choreography, and comedy. Traditionally, men who dress as women are known as drag queens, and traditionally, women who dress as men are known as drag kings. To fully understand drag, however, I think it's important to look at the history. Drag has its historical roots in theatrical cross-dressing, when a male actor would dress as a female character in order to play that part. This is a tradition that is extended into the modern day, as it's generally common use that anyone of any gender can play any character as for the purposes of a production. More in line with this definition is more in line with our basic definition of drag from earlier. So in order to understand drag a little bit better in the more cultural contextual definition I used, we'll have to look to the mid-1800s and vaudeville-style minstrel shows. In these shows, performers would don things like blackface along with drag in order to perform caricatures that I'm sure none of us would find particularly funny. It might be kind of hard to see how drag is related to these minstrel shows, but I think if we come to understand the minstrel show's sense of humor as the exaggerated performance of a caricature of those black stereotypes, we can see how drag is a little bit related. Because while drag is definitely more nuanced and less horrifically offensive than those minstrel shows, drag isn't just the presentation of someone being the opposite gender, but an exaggerated, stylized version of that expression, often with an air of celebration or of parody. The most important part of drag history, however, comes in the 50s and 60s, during one of the most difficult times for the queer community in America. The 50s were a decade of conformity, with the laws to back it up. Police cracked down on queer people in radical spaces, able to arrest anybody who was publicly gender non-conforming, a direct threat to basically any drag performer. Despite the state violence, the 50s and 60s, were the years that brought drag into prominence, persisting and growing more popular and diverse during the time of oppression. This is also when drag and the queer community became linked. Drag became an act of rebellion and artistic expression for queer people, a legacy that continues to this day. Now, I'm not much of a history person. For me, the when and where aren't so much as important as the why. The question of why drag plays a role in the queer community and how it has supported and influenced queer people's struggle for liberation is core to understanding drag as an art form. In simplest terms, drag is performing a gender other than your own, and considering an inherent part of the queer experience is defying societal gender roles, whether it be a transgender person rejecting the gender they were assigned at birth, or a non-heterosexual person refusing to fit the roles given to them by their gender role. It's not hard to see why drag found a home in the queer community. Drag represents a defiance of gender norms to its extreme. Not only is it a rejection of gendered expectations, but it's a celebration of gender nonconformity itself. It's not just a fun, flashy show, enjoyable for all, it's an expression of a part of someone's true self. And it's a brave and transgressive act in a society that has long since persecuted that type of expression. During periods like the 50s, when America was cracking down on anyone who didn't conform, drag was the choice to be proud, defiant, and visible, embodying the spirit that the queer community expresses every year during Pride. Even in this day and age, being proud and visible can put a target on your back. But drag performers have never let that stop them from living their best life. The revolutionary ideology represented by drag doesn't just stop at the stage either. The queer community has a long history of fighting tooth and nail for every right they've ever been given, and drag has never been one to sit on the sidelines. Drag and its community have always been a part of the revolution. Fantastic. From the scholarly work, we're not just lip-syncing up here, music and collective identity in the drag performance. Authors Kaminsky and Taylor state, throughout the 20th century, drag performers have not only been large social gatherings, but also precursors to community organizing and overt political actions on the behalf of gays and lesbians. Drag isn't just revolutionary ideas, it's a revolutionary action. I hope in hearing me speak today, I have passed on a little of the great respect I have for the art of drag and the people who do it. Although drag is often misunderstood by the wider public, it is an art form with a long history of pain, persecution, and liberation that has been an integral part of the queer community. Even as drag becomes more socially acceptable and changes over time, it will continue to embody the revolutionary ideals and actions of the people who have had to fight for their right to exist. In the end, it's not about whether you like the shows or the fashion is your style, or if you think the performers are cool, because drag isn't just a show or a costume. Drag is about defiance and strength, the strength to be who you are and to celebrate it, no matter what anyone else thinks. So if you see a drag queen, respect her. And if you meet a drag king, love him. And if you ever feel small, scared, and alone, remember that there is someone out there who will celebrate everything that makes you different. Thank you. My throat hurts.